Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I am Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Thursday. Thank you so much for joining me today. We have, as always, an awesome show planned for you today. Coming to you live again from my home studio. Hope you're enjoying. I'm enjoying my home studio. Love the motif, love the atmosphere, love the vibe here, the energy. I hope you guys can feel it on this Thursday morning. We got a lot to talk about, and I'm so glad you're here. We're going to start with me unpacking 3 or 4 different topics that are resonating in the news cycle, and I'm going to start with Ryan Clark, the ESPN broadcaster. Ryan Clark is back. He took a few weeks off from race baiting, and now he's race baiting again. He went on First Take and had some things to say about Shedeur Sanders and why he might be falling in the draft. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Buffalo Bills. They made, in my view, some really big moves defensively, and this is where they needed to improve. Picking up Joey Bosa on a 1-year deal, I think, is a perfect move. I still think there's some tread left on Joey Bosa's tires. He got released by the Los Angeles Chargers, and now they signed Larry Ogunjobi to a 1-year deal, an additional defensive lineman from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Love these moves. This is what was missing from the Buffalo Bills. I didn't think their defense was good enough this past year to compensate for the fact that Josh Allen didn't have all the necessary weapons. If they can get Joey Bosa healthy, if they can get Joey Bosa to 12 to 15 sacks to where he is a pass rushing presence and create some third and long situations, I love what Buffalo's done here. These are Super Bowl type moves, improving their defensive line. I'll talk with Steve Kim about that, see if he sees it the same way as I do. The actor, Anthony Mackie, he's now Captain America. He said a bunch of woke stuff on this press tour for Captain America. He went on the Pivot podcast with Ryan Clark and Channing Crowder and Fred Taylor and said a couple of really interesting things, and I think somewhat contradictory. We'll discuss that with Steve Kim. I'm trying to think here. There's one more topic that I promised I would get to. Oh, man, I can't believe I'm having this brain fart. Ric Bucher. Ric Bucher went on Doug Gottlieb's radio show and gave his perspective on the Stephen A. Smith LeBron James dust-up and what that confrontation was about, and speculated about or talked about how players are interpreting that. We'll talk about that with Steve Kim. Ric Bucher seems to be of the opinion that Stephen A. Smith crossed a line with his commentary about Bronny James and the way he talked about it as it relates to LeBron James as a father. All those interesting things to talk about with Steve Kim. And then a couple of those things, particularly Anthony Mackie and his comments about whether success is earned or given. And then his comments about we're in the past 20 years, we're seeing the evisceration of masculinity. We'll talk about those things with Shemeka Michelle. It's going to be a very thoughtful show, interesting show. I'll get us started. I do, but before I hop into Shedeur Sanders and Ryan Clark, let me just remind you all about what's going on here May 2nd and 3rd. I need you guys here in Nashville. Roll Call is coming together awesomely. Need you here. Go to fearlessrollcall.com. Get all the information. It's just $100 for the all-day event on Saturday. The VIP events, which are off the charts. Myself, Steve Byrne, Tucker Carlson, Randy Hauser on Friday night at 3rd and Lindley right here in Nashville. That's an awesome event. You want to be there on Friday night. Saturday, you want to be there for the all-day event. It's just $100 for that Saturday event. And then Saturday night, we're going to top it off with an island-themed party at my friend Lee Beeman and Julie Beeman's mansion here in Nashville. That's going to be awesome. Great music, great food, great fun. We're going to put on our best Tommy Bahama gear and just have a great time. These events, the Friday night, the Saturday night events, ladies are welcome. Gentlemen, bring your wife, bring your significant other. Ladies, if you want to come solo and maybe hunt up a good Christian man, you're more than welcome to join us Friday night, Saturday night. The all-day event is just for men. FearlessRollCall.com is where you get that information. All right, let me get into today's show. And let's start by playing Ryan Clark's comments about Shedeur Sanders, and where he basically played the race card, that there's some sort of skin color that Shedeur has that NFL teams just aren't comfortable with. Let's hear from Ryan Clark.
We all know that they plant these certain reports or they say these certain things, and you do hear the word arrogant. Why is he arrogant? Because he won't walk into the meeting and bend the knee, or he won't sit in the meeting and question himself or his abilities or his knowledge and experience in the game. I don't believe that that's arrogance. I want a quarterback that's self-assured. I want a quarterback that could cut the film on, and when you ask him a question about why did you make this mistake, or why did you make this throw, or why was this the right read, I want him to be able to regurgitate that to me like he's in the play at the moment, the same way a coach or an offense coordinator would, because that's what he's going to have to do. And I've had conversations with Shedeur Sanders, and he can do that. We all know that it's not just about him being Deion Sanders' son. It's about the bravado he carries. It's about the fact that he looks a certain way. It is about the fact that the color of his skin sometimes at that position can be questioned. And I believe Shedeur Sanders is going to have to deal with that until he gets on the field. Now,
so there you have it. Surprise, surprise. He has a skin color that can be questioned at that position, according to Ryan Clark. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts just played in the Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts just won a Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes has won 3, I believe. Lamar Jackson's won 2 or 3 MVP trophies. What are we talking about, Ryan? This is like, these guys, they go a few seconds, a few weeks. Oh, I don't have any traction. Let me play the race card. Oh, I just got off the phone with Deion Sanders, because he mentions in there that he's talked to Deion. I just got off the phone, and Deion's frustrated. Shedeur's not going to go in the first 2 or 3 picks of the draft. It must be racism. Oh, there's questions about Shedeur's arrogance. Oh, that must be racism. Now, we all know that if a white quarterback, there were questions about his arrogance or his attitude. If he were, let's say, Johnny Manziel, Johnny Football, if Shedeur, who carries himself exactly like Johnny Manziel, and people had all kinds of questions about Johnny Manziel's attitude and arrogance and whether or not he was self-aware enough, those questions are all perfectly fine. He's Johnny Manziel. He's white. But because Shedeur's skin is black and his dad is Deion Sanders and Ryan Clark just happened to talk to Deion and Shedeur, now if you have these questions about the guy that is pointing to watches and being very arrogant and the whole rap persona, he wants to be a rapper. If you have any questions about that, well, of course, it's only racism. What else could it be? You're not allowed to question Shedeur Sanders. Isn't anybody tired of this? I mean, the RC on his lapel, you think it stands for Ryan Clark. It really stands for race card. That's what the RC on Ryan Clark's deal. It's race card. And look, don't think I'm just picking on Ryan Clark. Didn't I just give Ryan Clark credit last week? He made a good point about LeBron James. It helped me think of something. Gave him credit. But it's this type of garbage that wears me out about Ryan Clark. This is all he does, is go on TV and get traction from, oh, that's racist. And Cam Ward, who I believe is black, the Miami quarterback, He's scheduled to be the first quarterback taken. His color doesn't matter. No one has questions about his color. It doesn't raise questions. Cam Ward. So what's the difference between Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders? Maybe it's attitude. Maybe it's the way they carry themselves. Maybe Shedeur is a bit cocky. Maybe he doesn't have the kind of self-awareness where he's able to admit a mistake, able to humble himself and not have an excuse or a rationalization for everything. Maybe he's got too much of his dad's personality, which will work at a cornerback island position. Cornerbacks, mostly, they never huddle up. Particularly shut down, cover one side of the field corners like Deion Sanders. The teammates and being a leader is far less important. Having even any self-awareness, far less important for a cornerback. Corner, C-O-R-N-E-R. Not a quarterback, Q-U-A-R. Q-U-A-R-T-E-R. There's a difference between those positions and how you carry yourself. And maybe Shedeur has carried himself like his father to his detriment that teams have questions. Is he another Johnny Manziel? Is he another Cam Newton? Because you can sit there, well, Cam won the MVP, and there was 2 or 3 years where Cam was arguably the best player in football. They're not drafting you at number 1 at the quarterback position to be one of the best players for 2 or 3 years. They want 10, 12, 15, 20 years out of that position at a super high level. They don't want someone that flames out quickly because they didn't bring the right attitude to the position. If you remember, Cam Newton came into the league talking about, I want to be an icon. He didn't say rapper, but he might as well have said rapper. He wanted to be an icon. He wasn't just focused on being the best quarterback he could be. And maybe that's a question about Shedeur Sanders that franchises have every right to ask. Are you looking at the money that is paid to these franchise quarterbacks, $50 and $60 million a year? You want to make sure when you're drafting that guy and you're thinking, hey, this might be a guy I may pay $50, $60, $70 million a year. Is he all in on football? Or is he all in on making himself an icon? Is he going to be running around in a Cam Newton-sized hat and clown suit the way that Cam Newton, and spending all his time at the beauty shop getting his hair did? These are legitimate questions. If you ever get in an ownership position or a hiring position, you have these questions about employees. It's natural. It's obvious. And Ryan Clark wants to shield Shedeur Sanders and any other black quarterback he can think of from these types of questions by just claiming racism. It actually hinders the quarterback. It actually hinders the player. It stunts his growth. Ryan Clark just wears me out. I've already told you what I think about what the Bills have done. The Bills have made Super Bowl-worthy moves, I believe, with Joey Bosa and Larry Ogunjobi. They needed to shore up their defensive line. They need to be better in both run defense and in pass rush defense. They've needed a pass rusher. And I know Joey Bosa's 30 now. He's had some injury issues. But this is the kind of move that I think puts a team in a Super Bowl. If they can get one strong year out of Joey Bosa, a 12-sack, 14-sack season, if he can be that, he still has that kind of talent. He just has to stay healthy. I love that Joey Bosa did this rather than, hey, let me go play with my brother in San Francisco. That'll be fun. But no, he went, the Bills are Super Bowl ready. They got a quarterback. They have everything they need. They just need more defensive spark. Love this move by the Buffalo Bills. For me, it's the best offseason so far, best free agent move so far of anybody. And I know there's been a lot of big-name receivers and QBs moving around, but the Joey Bosa move and the Larry Ogunjobi move are the two moves to me that scream, hey, that could put the Bills over the top, get them through the AFC Championship, and get them to a Super Bowl. Love this move. Have you ever browsed in incognito mode? It's probably not as incognito as you think. Google recently settled a $5 billion lawsuit after being accused of secretly tracking users in incognito mode. Google's defense? Incognito does not mean invisible. In fact, all your online activity is still 100% visible to a ton of third parties unless you use my great friends at ExpressVPN. One of the easiest ways for data brokers to track you is through your device's unique IP address, which also reveals information about your location. With ExpressVPN, however, your IP address is hidden. That makes it much more difficult for data brokers, internet service providers, and Wi-Fi network admins to monitor, track, and monetize your private online activity. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network traffic to keep your data safe from hackers when you're on public Wi-Fi. It works on all devices, phone, laptop, tablet, you name it. Just tap one button to turn it on and you're protected. It's that easy. ExpressVPN has shown me how valuable protecting your private data can be. Now, I don't go on the internet without it. Protect your online privacy today by visiting expressvpn.com/fearless. That's ExpressVPN, ExpressVPN.com/fearless. You can get an extra 4 months free. ExpressVPN.com/fearless. I'm going to move on to, and again, I'm going to cover all these things with Steve. Anthony Mackie. I want to play this clip of Anthony Mackie, the actor, Captain America. He's been in a lot of good movies. We're going to start with a clip of him talking about how success isn't earned, it's given. And he did this on the Pivot podcast, talking to 3 former professional football players, Ryan Clark, Channing Crowder, and Fred Taylor. He's telling them, and look at their expressions, look at how they nod their head as Anthony Mackie, an actor, tells them that success isn't earned, it's given. Play the clip.
I've been in the business 24 years, right? And I've seen people go from nothing to the biggest stars in the world. I've seen people go from one role to winning Academy Awards and doing all this shit. And what I realized yesterday thinking about it, we're lying to our kids, dog. And I think that's a big problem in our community. We tell our kids that they can, and this is fresh on my heart, like I literally just came to this conclusion last night. We tell our kids if they do right and they make the good grades and they go to the programs and they will become successful. If you work hard enough, your work will be paid off. And that's not true. Success is given. It's not earned. Because you can be the most brilliant. If one person don't tap you, each one of y'all. There were people who could hit harder, who could catch better, who could run faster, but somebody said, you're the one. And the other 50 behind you fell off. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And because of that, I don't know what that emotion or that feeling is the scary thing. Because I went to all the programs. I've done Broadway, I've done off-Broadway. I've been in the business 24 years. I've been in 2 Academy Award films. I've done independent films. I've done major motion pictures. Now I'm Captain America. So now what?
That's mind-blowing to me. That the athletes would sit there and nod their head with approval as someone, because keep in mind, football, sports, these are seen as the ultimate meritocracies. Everything's earned based on your talent, based on your work ethic. I think Ryan Clark was an undrafted free agent entering the NFL. He earned everything that he got in the National Football League. And he's sitting there nodding his head in agreement, offering no objection as Anthony Mackie tells him, that he's just recently discovered that the world, everything is given in the world, nothing is earned. And someone should have said, hey, bro, I get you're out in Hollywood, and you're right that they pick and choose in Hollywood. The people that run Hollywood, the whole system in Hollywood, it's not based on merit. It's based on a casting couch. It's based on sexual fluidity. It's based on narrative and willingness to adhere to a narrative arc and promote a certain agenda. It's based on sexual favors. It's based on men with gigantic egos telling other men and women, I can make you a star or I can destroy you. Yes, that is how Hollywood works. But one of those football players should have been like, hey, man, that's Hollywood. It's very secular out there. It's very satanic out there. It's very hostile to Jesus Christ out there. But in our profession, everything's earned. And for most of America, they believe that America's built on anybody can rise up and earn as high a place. Go look at Bill Clinton's background. Go look at Barack Obama's background. And whether they earned it, and again, these political figures, but again, they came from nothing and rose all the way to the presidency. Look at my father. Look at my mother. Look at me. Look at my brother. Look at so many Americans that feel like, hey, man, I followed a certain script, obeyed certain rules, and worked harder than the next man, and look what I earned. Yes, is America becoming more corrupt and more like Hollywood and more secular, more hostile to Jesus Christ, and we're going away from merit and people earning things? Absolutely. But those football players should have been arguing for merit. And as a black man, Anthony Mackie should be arguing for merit. Because if we ever get into this full-blown system like Hollywood, where it's just, hey, we pick and choose who we want to reward and who gets to have success, wait till you see how much hell black people catch then. All these little puppets that they pick out that are doing well, that's a select, tiny, tiny few. And they use that little select, tiny, tiny few to convince you that, oh, this is so much better for you, the working class, the people that aren't in Hollywood. That, oh, don't you see how well Oprah's doing? That doesn't trickle down to the working man. But I was blown away watching these athletes, say Anthony Mackie, make this argument. In another part of the interview, Anthony Mackie said something interesting and somewhat contradictory, or I'm not sure if he can make the connection, but these two statements are tied together. He complained, or he was explaining about how he raises his son, and then he was complaining about how, and he said, over the past 20 years, American masculinity has been destroyed. Play the clip.
I keep my boys humble. Like, my boys have never had a pair of Jordans. You know, my boys don't do all that internet fly shit. I'm like your kids. And no, I don't give a I could be the biggest star in the world. Do not let me catch you being stupid. Mm-hmm. Do not. And my oldest gets it. My 15-year-old, he tells the other ones, he's like, yo, don't make dad mad. Because once you get one that's right, he gonna straighten the other ones out. Mm-hmm. So it's just that thing of, in the past 20 years, we've been living through the death of the American male. They have literally killed masculinity in our homes and our communities, for one reason or another. But I raised my boys to be young men. And however you feel about that, you feel about that. Right. But my boys will always be respectful. They will always say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. No, sir, no, ma'am. They will always say thank you. They will always open a door for a lady. They will always make sure that their mother is taken care and provided for. They will always be men. And that's always, since they were 2 years old, Every time I left for a job, I tell my 15-year-old, you the man of the house. You make sure these doors are locked every night, this alarm is on, you text me or you call me every night before you go to bed and you wake up.
I love that.
Because we're men. If I'm not there to protect, he got to be there to protect. Because you can have all the money in the world, climb through the window, that money means nothing.
Right.
You can have all the celebrity in the world, jump through the door, that celebrity means nothing. Yeah. So you got to have a little guard in there, you know? And so for me, it's always that idea of American masculinity is very different.
And this is my disappointment. With the athletes, with Ryan Clark, with Channing Crowder, these guys aren't prepared to lead legitimate discussions. Because Anthony Mackie has said something fascinating here. He just needs to be corrected. This isn't some 20-year problem, Anthony. I wish these guys were allowed to talk to people that are actually intelligent and have actually looked into these issues a little deeper than Twitter. But someone needed to jump in and be like, 20 years? Man, this has been going on since about the 19th Amendment. And as it relates to the black community, it really took off in the 1960s when Daniel Patrick Moynihan suggested an investment in the black family and the black man, and LBJ and the liberals said, nah, let's eviscerate the black man and let's empower the black woman. See, and that's the real history that Anthony Mackie either doesn't know, isn't allowed to discuss, no one sitting there with him, able to course correct him or provide him additional insight. Like, bruh, the emasculation of men, not just black men, but just of men. This has been a 100+ year process. Men being forced to apologize for crimes they did not commit. Oh, we were so unfair to women. We must now bend over backwards because we didn't let them have jobs 100 years ago. I just saw a stat that I believe they said on the Titanic, when the Titanic sunk, the ship, and this should have been covered in the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio and whoever, Kate Winslet or whoever his co-star was, I can't remember, but in the movie Titanic, 83% of the female passengers on the Titanic survived. 83%. And I think it was either 23% or 17% of the men survived. And so what I'm talking about is like 100 years ago when men were just so unbelievably unfair to women and we were so sexist and misogynistic and just unfair to women. There was a time when men took it as their sacred honor. I will choose death so that you can survive. And that's on that, with that ship sinking, men chose death so that women could survive. And this is back when, oh, men were just so unfair. And look, men still are willing to sacrifice their lives for women and do. But we've been convinced, oh, we've just been so unfair. These women, oh, we stopped them from inventing air flight. There would have been the Wright sisters if it wasn't so sexist in America. They would have discovered flight and invented an airplane long before the Wright brothers. The Wright sisters were denied that. This is the delusion and lies we tell ourselves. And Anthony Mackie can't connect the dots that the emasculation of men is how we drifted into a culture that success is given and not earned. When you have a robust masculine culture, men want the right and the opportunity to earn things. They don't respect people that are given things. But when you create this very feminized culture That's how a LeBron James can reach the conclusion of, hey, I'm going to give my son something. I'm going to disrespect my son by giving him something and not making him earn it, and I'm going to make everybody else just accept it. That you only do that in a feminized culture. And this has been a 100-year process, most acute in the last 60 years. The emasculation of men and the feminization of American culture and global culture. The things that Anthony Mackie are talking about here are connected. There's no one there to connect the dots to help him realize what he's saying and how we got here. This whole era of jocks and podcasts and jocks as the lead journalist, what you're ending up with is a very surface level, unsophisticated conversation about everything. Anthony Mackie said some interesting things here. He needed someone to connect the dots so that he could fully understand what he was saying. Finally, I want to play you this clip of Ric Bucher on the Doug Gottlieb show. We'll play this clip. I'll talk about it just for a brief second, then we'll bring Steve Kim into the conversation. We'll start with the Ric Bucher and LeBron James and who's to blame. But let's hear from Ric Bucher, longtime NBA journalist, beat writer, real connected source on the NBA, works over at Fox Sports, guy I respect a lot. Here's Ric Bucher on Doug Gottlieb's show talking about LeBron and Stephen A. Smith beefing.
Yep. How does the league, how do guys in the league perceive this?
Oh, they perceive it as a sports commentator or the media, someone in the media, overstepping their bounds, making something that wasn't about sport, making it personal, because and maybe doing it for attention and clicks as opposed to genuine commentary, and it's not a conversation. The problem with the conversation around Bronny James is there's the conversation about whether Bronny belongs in the NBA or is a legitimate NBA player, and LeBron's part in that, and what Bronny's potential is. And then there is where Stephen A. took it, which is, I'm begging you as a father, don't do this to your son. That's what made it personal. That's where, and I mean, let's take a step back. Think about LeBron James and his history, and the fact that he didn't grow up with a dad, and by all accounts, wants to be the dad that he never had, wants to be a good dad to his kids. And Stephen A. was basically saying publicly, you're not being a good dad to your son, and I'm going to pull you up on that. I need to tell you how you're not being a good son, or how you should be a good father to your son. And that's where it went out of bounds. And I don't actually, LeBron's response to that, I don't have a problem with it, if he has a problem with it, because I thought that Stephen A.'s, I don't think it was genuine. I thought it was theater. And when you get into something that means as much as that to LeBron James, he's going to say something, and other players are going to look at it in the same way. You're talking about my family. You're not talking about an NBA player now, not the way that Stephen A. framed it. You're talking about my family, and they're going to feel some kind of way about that.
So, Ric Bucher blames Stephen A. Smith, says Stephen A. Smith stepped over the line by questioning LeBron as a father. And I do think maybe you can nitpick the way Stephen A. Smith unpacked it, his comments about Bronny and LeBron, but I don't think Stephen A. Smith crossed the line. I also don't think LeBron James crossed that line. As I've said previously, I think those types of confrontations used to go on all the time. Hey, I didn't like what you wrote. I didn't like what you said. You step to a guy in the locker room. You let him know, hey, I'm upset, and try me again, and you may F around and find out. That's commonplace. The only thing different here is that LeBron did it on the sidelines in front of cameras for the world to see, but it still wasn't a big deal. I'm not sure if I believe either guy stepped over the line, but we'll ask Steve Kim, and we'll ask Steve Kim about all these topics I've talked about here at the start of the show. I hope you're having a great Thursday. We still have a great show planned for you. More to come with Steve Kim and with Shemeka Michelle. Remember, tomorrow we'll be playing Listen or Lose. You can still join us by emailing Butter at LOLonFearless@gmail, LOLonFearless@gmail. Download the Fold app at foldapp.com/Whitlock, foldapp.com/Whitlock. If you want a chance to win $100 in free Bitcoin, sign up, LOLonFearless@gmail.com. We're still looking for contestants. All right, Steve Kim. X. Men, it's time to rise. Our country, our faith, our future, all under attack. I'm bringing the boldest voices to Nashville. Roll Call 3.0 is your call to action. Join me, join Tucker, and let's take a stand together. May 2nd and 3rd in Nashville. I am Jason Whitlock, your host.
Went without so that he could give you an abundant life. Now it's time for you to evade the ego trip so that someone else can live better. Amen.
It's necessary that we decide to become men of character, of godly intent.
He gives power to the faint, and to them that have no might he increases strength. Even you shall faint and be weary. Young men shall utterly fall. Jason, I know you called it to preach off, but I feel like preaching up in here right about now.
모두 다 빨리 박수 쳐 기다리지 말고 서둘러 reason that I'm back is to feed you raps I see that you up here below so fly.
All right, welcome back. Joined by the Korean Cosell. Steve, we'll start where I just left off. Ric Bucher defending LeBron James, and Ric Bucher is no apologist for LeBron James. Rick seems to think Stephen A. crossed a line with the way that he discussed LeBron as a father. Do you agree?
Completely disagree. I just wonder, and again, I don't want to be Oliver Stone here. Has this become a proxy war? Is now, because I don't know what the relationship is between Bucher, who I really like, and Stephen A. Smith. Look, both things could be true. Like, yeah, he's a father that stood up for his son and his own fatherhood. But the way he handled it, I think most people are siding with Stephen A. Smith. Now, I also think a lot of people are now lampooning Stephen A. Smith for going on this media tour dressed up as a starter kit, Nino Brown, talking about how he's the toughest guy and how he would have stood up to him. But I'm somebody, and I can't do nothing. So I mean, again, Stephen A. Smith, everything he said, if you really look at it in totality, most everything would be something that is the consensus with the general public that is neutral. He put his son in this situation. His son is now in the NBA. His son probably doesn't deserve to be in the NBA. His son hasn't been very good, and you wrap it all back to LeBron. You put him there. So in this particular situation, I would disagree with Rick.
Yeah, and I like Rick a lot as well. And I said before you came on that I don't think anybody crossed the line. I don't think Stephen A. Smith crossed the line, and I don't think LeBron James crossed the line by saying something to Stephen A. Smith. It's commonplace. This used to go on all the time. Only thing different is he did it during a game out in front of everybody, which, that was probably calculated on LeBron's part. He wanted to make a show of it, send a message out to everybody else in the media. And so he's just like, it's like showing up in prison and you beat up the bully to let everybody else know that, hey, I'm here. I'm no punk. And so I think LeBron, in a calculated move, said, I'm going to take a swing at Stephen A. Smith out in front of everybody and send a message out to everybody else in the media that, hey, don't watch how you talk about my son. Some people are falling in line. Others are saying, don't try that on me, LeBron.
Yeah, I mean, Jason, I forgot to tell you this story. This is about 8-9 years ago with the dearly departed Dan Goosen, who I had a great relationship, except for about a year and a half. There was this fight that took place between Erislandy Lara and Paul Williams. It was a terrible decision, and everyone thought Lara got robbed, but Paul Williams, who was Dan Goosen's son, got the decision. Terrible boxing politics at play. And I read some quotes where Dan Goosen said, well, my son said, Dad, what's the big deal? I watched the fight. I thought Paul Williams won. And so I wrote a piece, and I was kind of being snarky, being a bit of a smart ass. And I said, well, let me just tell you something. If my dad put a roof under my head for 18 years and bought my first PlayStation and paid for my college education, I would have thought Paul Williams won too. Literally within 90 minutes of that story being published, and I think I was still at Max Boxing at that point, I get a call from Dan. Now, you have to understand, I get along with the Goosen family very well. I would actually consider them friends, and I work out his brother's gym, the famed 10 Goose. I go there once a week to get whatever sweat I want on with the heavy bag. He was angry to a point where he said, don't ever bring up my son. And I said, no. I said, Dan, don't you bring up your son. I would have never brought up your son if you made him the story. We went back and forth, and he said, I'll kick your, and I said, Dan, you're a buffoon. You're being a buffoon. And then I wrote something about that. Now, we didn't talk for about a year and a half. Then something happened where he got into litigation with Andre Ward. Now, being the fair-minded journalist that I am, I took Dan Goosen's side because I thought he was in the right. And Dan Goosen called me and he said, Steve, you know what? I appreciate that, man. And I said, we're good, right, Dan? He goes, yeah. And we laugh about it. And then he died a year or two later, and I miss him to this day. But these things are going to happen, Jason, if you cover a beat on a consistent basis.
Totally agree. That's a good story. That doesn't surprise me at all. I want to move to Ryan Clark. He's been out of the news cycle for a bit, and he felt it clearly and said, hey, this RC on my lapel, it actually stands for race card, and I got to play it from time to time in order to remain relevant. And so he has now come to the conclusion that anybody criticizing Shedeur Sanders is racist. These stories about people having a problem with Shedeur's attitude or arrogance or the way he carries himself, it's all born in racism because he has a skin color that some people in the NFL still question. And I'm like, isn't Cam Ward supposed to be the first quarterback taken? How many of these black quarterbacks got to go number one overall, way high up in the draft before we just put this thing away? But Ryan Clark has dusted off his race card. He wears it on his lapel. He plays it on the show for relevance. Your thoughts?
Jason, I saw a tweet pertaining to this, and I read one of the comments, and I fact-checked it. Did you know since the year 2000, 7 black quarterbacks have been taken number one? I mean, the days of Doug Williams getting, downgraded a little bit because he played at Grambling, and certainly the days of Warren Moon winning a Rose Bowl MVP and having to win, 5 Grey Cups as an Edmonton Eskimo, and other athletic players saying, hey, learn how to run the out route or can you backpedal, I think are long gone. And I do think, here's the interesting thing about Cam Ward. If he was your average, everyday, corn-fed white quarterback, I believe there would be other people saying this, and Ryan Clark would be on a daily rant against this. But because he is who he is, you got to kind of mute that a little bit because there is that dynamic. But Jason, I'm just telling you, there's something about Shedeur I don't trust on 2 levels. Number 1, takes too many sacks. Number 2, I don't think he has super arm strength. Well, it's more than 2. I don't think he's a great athlete. I actually don't think he's your stereotypical black quarterback. His athleticism, I think, is very average. And number 4, he takes too many sacks. And here's the other intangible that a lot of people are talking about. There's something about him that you don't know if he's really likable. And so you're wondering to yourself, is this Ryan Leaf. And by the way, this reminds me of Will Levis a couple years ago. They were early on in that process in his draft class about 2 years ago. People thought based on arm talent that he was top 5. Then all of a sudden you started hearing things. And guess what? He dropped out of the first round. And it was not that big of a deal. No one cared about it. But yes, Ryan Clark has made this into a cottage industry for himself for at least the next, I would say, 3 to 4 weeks.
I don't think you're making the right analogy with Ryan Leaf. This guy's got Johnny Manziel written all over him. This is a rich kid who taunted the opposition and did all the flashy stuff. Johnny did the money deal. Shedeur would show off his little $500,000, $100,000 watch or $70,000 watch, whatever. This dude has Johnny Manziel written all over him and a little bit of Cam Newton, and people have a right to ask those questions. Does he have the right personality to be our long-term franchise quarterback?
Yeah, and to be fair to Cam, our guy, he was such an enormous physical talent. I mean, he was an absolute unicorn, and I've always said it. What he did at Auburn that 1 year, leading a team that by SEC standards was not that talented. They had one other blue chip player, Nick Fairley, the defensive tackle. The greatest stat ever for any national championship quarterback, Jason, in my view, is that the 2010 Auburn team, every other skill position player on that side of the ball or even the line, they don't have a single NFL stat. It's basically, Cam Newton was a one-man show. And so here's what I remember about Cam that was a little bit of a question mark is when he said, well, I want to be an icon. See, now I took it a different way. I thought that was his way of saying, I want to be one of the greatest ever. I want to be one of the best that ever was, and I want to be remembered. I didn't think he was talking about a clothing brand, being a logo. So I thought I think that's a little bit unfair of a comparison to Cam Newton.
Cam Newton, who, as soon as he got the opportunity, dressed himself up in a clown suit and grew his hair out and spent all his time at the beauty salon.
10 years later. That was 10 years later. He had a nice short haircut, used to dress in regular ties, didn't have the top hats. He only did that later in his career. Jason,
I think it was after his 5th or 6th year. I think it was a little earlier than that.
Well, he won the MVP in 2015. We'll have to go back to those press conferences.
Yeah. I'm going out of order again because I want to save Anthony Mackie for last. But the Buffalo Bills, Steve, I believe, have made strong Super Bowl move, acquiring Joey Bosa and acquiring Larry Ogunjobi from the Pittsburgh Steelers, Ogunjobi, defensive lineman, and pass rush specialist Joey Bosa from the Los Angeles Chargers. I love these moves. To me, they're Super Bowl moves. It's exactly what they needed to do, improve their defensive line, improve their ability to create second and third and long.
Well, this is about getting off the field, and in my view, based on his injury history, the mileage, but the fact that I still think he's got something left in the tank and something to prove, Joey Bosa as a situational third down guy where you limit his snaps here and there, paired with Greg Rousseau, and it's the fact that you have your quarterback locked up and a running back still with a lot of tread on that tire, Jason, the pressure is now on McDermott to play in the first week of February. We know they're good through the fall. They've shown they can play through mid-January, Super Bowl or bust in Buffalo.
You make a great point that, and particularly if Bosa and Ogunjobi stay healthy throughout the season, if they don't make it to a Super Bowl, you have to move on from Sean McDermott.
Yeah. Sean McDermott, if he does not make the Super Bowl and he gets jettisoned, and look, sometimes you have to make a change. This reminds me of a guy that I know you remember, A.O. Bum Phillips of the Houston Oilers, the Love You Blue. There was a period of about 3 years, Jason. They might have been the second or third best team in football. There was a problem. It was a steel curtain, and they would always run into it. And after 1980, when they lost to the Raiders, they said, you know what, we've gone as far as we can with this nice guy with the cattle hat. We're going to jettison him off. Guess what? It took the Oilers about 8 years to get back to the playoffs. So, again, these things don't always work, but McDermott, I believe, is now under the gun to deliver at least a Lamar Hunt trophy.
Steve, finally here, I want to spend a little time talking about Anthony Mackie. Two different things that I think contradict. He's at one point complaining or suggesting or stating that, hey, success isn't earned, it's given. And then later he is saying that he's raising his sons to be masculine and that masculinity has been under attack for the last 20 years, but which I think is a valid point. I think he's a little short-sighted and doesn't understand, like, there's been 100-year attack on masculinity, and it's been really acute the last 60 years. But it's almost like, was he how did you hear his statements about success given, not earned? Was that a complaint, or did he think he was explaining something profound? Because I was just shocked that, hey, there's 3 football players that played in the ultimate meritocracy, and they're not pushing back on this guy. That, yeah, Hollywood, things are given, but out here in the real world or out here in the sports world, things are actually earned.
I believe he was actually stating a reality, because he's not saying don't work hard. I mean, think about it. What's a common thing that we talk about with certain people that are mysteriously moved up the ladder? Plant. That's what he's talking about. He's like, why are certain people crowned? Why are certain people given these exalted positions? Why are certain people given these privileges? And I think there's a reality. I think he's right, because we can go through our own experiences and wonder, why is that guy getting that gig? Or why is that guy all of a sudden within 2 years, and I've been here a lot longer, given opportunities I never have been? It is a fact of life, and it would frustrate anybody, but I do like the fact that he's still telling his son, we got to work hard here. We can't just complain and bitch and moan about this thing. So I actually think he was being very realistic, because, Jason, we've all heard of the casting couch. We've all heard of the Hollywood stories about how certain people get certain roles and what people are willing to do for them. I'm not naive. Anthony Mackie's probably seen it firsthand, and maybe he didn't participate to the degree he needed to get certain roles. So I actually do not have a problem with what he was saying.
Well, why not limit his comments or focus his comments on, hey, this is what goes on in Hollywood. This is what I've seen. This industry frustrates me. Hey, I know you guys in football actually have to earn your keep, even though there's a little bit politics have moved into football. We're now installing female referees and female coaches. And so I just wish it had been more of a complaint about, like, hey, this Hollywood culture is spreading out everywhere, and this is kind of sad, rather than, hey, man, I just kind of throw my hands up and figured out that, you know, unless someone gives you something, and again, that promotes the entitlement mentality that, oh, I just got to be given something. I can't earn anything. I must be given something. That's why it didn't hit right, didn't land right with me.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. And look, he's having a conversation, but I'm just telling you, I think it was his way of saying, guys, this is the real world. It's not fair. And sometimes you have to be able to deal with it. Look, he's had a highly successful career. He's actually overcome it. Now, I didn't listen to the other parts of the interview. He may have been complaining about his own lot in life. I know a lot of people didn't like some of his comments during the lead up to this movie that he was starring in, which seemed
Captain
a little
America.
Captain America, where he didn't seem very American, which is ironic.
Yeah.
And careful, that the thing is, ironically, there's going to be people that said, Anthony, you are the beneficiary of such things, right? Because there's a segment of America that believes Captain America, that character, traditionally has always been a white guy. And when you go back to the comic books, back wherever they were written in the 40s and 50s. So I get where you would have an issue with it. But I think overall, I like the message where he's saying, look, we're going to be men here. We're going to be hard men. We're going to work hard. But I think that there is a realization that there is luck or fortune that is involved in all of this.
Well, I'm not surprised, given the season that the Miami football team had and how so much was given to them and not earned. I'm not surprised that you're defending Anthony Mackie here with all, I mean, you guys were given about 5 different victories. That the way you guys cheated Ball State at the top of the season, you still should be embarrassed about that. But anyway, Steve, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. We'll see you next time. That's Steve Kim. Just around the corner is our girl, Shemeka Michelle. Next. Men, it's time to rise. Our country, our faith, our future, all under attack. I'm bringing the boldest voices to Nashville. Woke Call 3.0 is your call to action. Join me, join Tucker, and let's take a stand together. May 2nd and 3rd in Nashville. I am Jason Whitlock, your host.
Went without so that he could give you an abundant life.
Young men shall utterly fall. Jason, I know you called us to preach off, but I feel like preaching up in here right about now.
All right, welcome back. Time for Shemeka Michelle. Shemeka, want to talk to you about Anthony Mackie, the star of Captain America, longtime Hollywood actor. I'm sure he's been in some other big movies that I can't think of off the top of my head, but I've seen some of them. He had some interesting things to say on the Pivot podcast. Just talked with Steve Kim about a little bit about those. Now I want to talk to you. Let's start with let's start with the most interesting, most relevant to you is his contention that masculinity has been eliminated in America, and he said for the last 20 years, I think he's off there, that this has been a 100-year process and, really acute in the black community in the last 50, 60 years. But I felt like it could be a fascinating conversation if he were with talking and engaging with people who could take him out into deeper waters than 3 football players. But he was talking about the way he raises his son, and those guys have kids, and they could relate to that, the guys he was talking to. What did you think of his comments about masculinity and his approaches in terms of how he raises his sons?
I definitely agree with him that masculinity has been on the decline, especially in our community. There's this hate towards men and for all things masculine. We hear this term toxic masculinity, and I truly believe toxic masculinity is not real. I believe the absence of masculinity is what has proven to be toxic. So I agree with him on that point. I wasn't sure how I felt about him saying that he tells his young children if he's not home, they're the man of the house. I mean, I don't know. I don't have boys, so that's probably something more you can talk to. And I say that because I feel like a lot of single mothers do that to their sons. They have them step in and be the man of the house, and I don't really like that. I understand him saying that in the sense that maybe he's working on a movie or something and he's coming back and they're just looking after it for now. I'm hoping that's what he meant by that, but I don't like it when it comes to single moms and their sons, and they make their sons their boyfriends instead of actually having men to take those places. So I'm a little on the fence about that when he mentioned that part.
You mentioned a great little subtle point that it did give me pause, made me think, and I do think it hits different when Anthony Mackie is in a marriage and he and his wife are raising the kids together, and he's just gone temporarily and will be back. So it hits different. But other people will hear it and apply it to their single parenthood life and think, yes, these 14 and 15-year-old boys, let's place this burden on them, and it's just inappropriate. And so people need to be factoring in that you have to allow kids to be kids and don't put burdens on them. And so there are women, I think, that sit around and kind of do the math of like, you know what, I can get divorced. My sons are old enough. He's ready to be the man of the house. And, you know, this husband of mine, you know, as long as I get enough of a support check, you know, now our 14-year-old son, he can kind of be the man of the house. That's how it hit me. It hit me the same way as you. It was like, I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know how people are going to receive that, how they're going to hear it. They're not talking at that time about, hey, look, this is much more complicated. But I get it. Because part of what Mackie was describing, it kind of back to, you know, I'm not sure if those guys are prepared to have that full-blown conversation. And just in terms of correcting him, like, hey, man, this is the last 20 years we've been emasculated. No, it's far deeper than that. You know, it's let's connect all the dots. But he you know, he's not ready to go there, and they're not ready to take him there. What do you think about the other aspect of him explaining that success isn't earned, it's given? I thought that was a really dangerous conversation, and a really where people, the takeaway, well, there's nothing I can do. And if the white man doesn't give it to me, I can't get it, would be the way some people heard that.
Yeah, I thought that comment was stupid. I thought it was dumb as his Captain America comment that he made a month or so ago. I just don't think that he gave it much thought, because by the end of that little segment, he had already contradicted himself. He talked about doing on Broadway, off Broadway. He talked about all the things that he had done before being Captain America. And then he was like, and I'm Captain America, now what? Well, you got Captain America because you actually prepared. You actually worked hard. And there's a saying, proper preparation prevents poor performance. You actually have to have some type of preparation to do well. There's also a scripture that says, my gift will make room for me and bring me before great men. So you want to be ready when that opportunity presents itself. If you're not working hard, if you're not trying to be the best you could be, if you're not trying to have those good grades, you're not going to be ready when the opportunity comes. So it's not just somebody handing this out to people. You know, nobody's going down the street saying, you look like a ball player. You actually have to be able to pick up the basketball and dribble and do some, like, you have to have some type of preparation. So I didn't like the way he was saying that, because if you're not ready, the opportunity can come and you just won't be prepared. I've been working for you since 2021. The reason why you found me is because I was running my mouth already. I was already doing this. So there was some type of preparation that had gone into this, or else I wouldn't have been prepared. I wouldn't have even gotten the opportunity, because I would not have been doing anything. You know, Delano wouldn't have known me. He wouldn't have been able to recommend me. So I just thought it was dangerous, as you said, because it's giving the kids the wrong message. I think what we've been doing is right. Tell them to actually work hard to prepare.
It's, you know, I had a little bit of this discussion yesterday, Shemeka, in terms of everybody's going on these shows, and it doesn't seem like they're doing any calculations on who's watching. And so Anthony Mackie, he was a bit profane during his interview with the Pivot. And then in this conversation, when you're sending out this message, and he said at one point, you know, I just thought of this yesterday. This is fresh on my mind. So this isn't something, it didn't sound like he's given a great deal of thought. And is he wondering, because what we always tend to wonder about now is, hey, how's this going to land on Twitter or X? How's this going to land on Instagram? It seems like no one ever thinks, how is this going to land with young people? What's going to be their takeaway? And I'm legit, that's what I'm thinking about a lot, is like, is what I'm saying going to be uplifting and beneficial to young people? And it seems like no one else cares about that, or certainly celebrities don't care about that. And it kind of baffles me.
Right. I think, and you also talked about they need to be listening to people with wisdom, and how it just seems that the ones that have put out this profanity and all this degeneracy get all the listeners. And where's the wisdom? Why aren't they flocking to people that can actually lead them in the right direction? But we do know that in the last days, people will heap to themselves those with itching ears, you know, and those that are older that should be given wisdom. They're just looking at the numbers. They're just looking at the popularity. It's like they don't even care what the next generation, what they will bring or present. You know, I always look at how we're doing this whole DEI. I'm so glad right now that we're going against it. But I think about that when you're telling these kids they don't have to be the best. You know, you want to give them a crutch. Oh, you're black, so you won't actually do this. It's going to be harder for you. These are going to be people, our doctors. You know, when I'm 80, somebody who actually just skated through medical school may be the one that I need to perform some type of great surgery on me, who won't know what they're doing because it was just handed to them because of skin color, or because they were gay, or because they were a woman. You know, I want us to start going back to wisdom and start having standards. We've lowered the standards so much that we don't even consider this is the next generation coming behind us. We need to be giving them wisdom to keep the world going, to keep the earth turning, but we're not doing that. And I don't understand what people are thinking. They're not thinking. They're not realizing that I may need this person later on and they won't even be prepared.
Or your child may need this person.
Yes.
Or your grandmama, or your mama, or
Yes.
your best friend. Yeah, we're not thinking very far ahead. We're just thinking about what's best for us, instant gratification, and all of society is paying the price. And just think about the people that paved the way for us and knew that the freedoms they were winning for us, they weren't actually going to benefit in their prime. They did it for our benefit, and we just don't seem to have that same mentality. Shemeka, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. You look awesome. We will see you next time. That's Shemeka Michelle. We'll play some tomorrow. We'll see you tomorrow.
Freedom. Came like a fighter, striking like a ladder, making all this moves for freedom. I want freedom. No negotiation, my sister, no relation. We all just wanna have freedom. Sitting on a corner, never been alone.